She looked up at me the way someone does when they've already decided they shouldn't but can't help it anymore. It was supposed to be a short visit. Just coffee, a quick check-in, a harmless hello. That's what I told myself when I saw her name still glowing on my phone screen after all this time. But the second I stepped into that room, her room, everything familiar turned fragile again. The air felt too still. Like it was holding its breath with us. She stood near the window, half turned toward the light. Her hair caught the morning sun the way it used to, soft gold that made it impossible to look anywhere else. She didn't say my name right away. Just smiled polite at first, then not so polite anymore. "Didn't think you'd actually come," she said, her voice low, carrying that half laugh she used when she didn't know what else to do with her heart. "I almost didn't," I said, though even then we both knew I would have come no matter what. The years between us weren't loud here. They hummed quietly, in the space between words, in the slight tremor in my hands when she reached for her cup. Her fingers brushed mine, accidentally. Or maybe not. It didn't matter which, because the contact was small, but everything in me noticed it. The warmth stayed too long, like her touch had memory. She looked at me again, eyes narrowing just enough to read something she wasn't ready to say. "You've grown," she murmured, not meaning height. I tried to laugh it off. That's what people tend to do. But her gaze didn't waver. Not everyone does. There it was, that familiar imbalance. She could say so much with one sentence. I'd need 5 to answer and still get it wrong. Her kitchen smelled like coffee and rain. There was a faint sound of a clock somewhere, marking seconds neither of us were spending wisely. I wanted to tell her she looked the same or maybe better, but she'd only smile like it was a lie. So I didn't. Instead, I said, "You seem good." She tilted her head. "Do I?" Silence again. The kind that doesn't end things, it stretches them. I leaned back against the counter, pretending to look around the room. The same old books on the table. The same cracked mug she refused to replace. Everything about her space felt like her, lived in, stubborn, beautiful without trying. Then she stepped closer, close enough that I caught the faint trace of her perfume, something floral, faintly tired. Like it had been on her skin all day and was only now deciding to give up. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said softly. "Like what?" Her eyes dropped to my hands, still resting on the counter. "Like you're remembering something that never happened." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She smiled again faintly, almost sadly, and reached past me to grab the sugar jar. Her shoulder brushed mine. The kind of small contact that made everything else in the world feel too far away. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I finally said. "I know," she answered. Then, quieter, "That's the trouble." A pause. A heartbeat. The faint sound of footsteps in the hall, growing closer. She froze. Looked toward the doorway. And before I could ask who it was, she turned back to me, eyes wide, almost pleading, and whispered, "Don't say anything." The door opened. The door had barely closed before the sound of her voice dropped lower, softer, edged with something unsteady. "That was my neighbor," she said. "She likes to keep track of who visits." She didn't look at me when she said it. Just stood there, fingers curled loosely around her mug, staring at the floor like she was trying to decide what version of herself to be next. "I didn't know I was worth keeping track of," I said. Her mouth twitched, half a smile, half something else. "You shouldn't be." It was always like this with her, words that seemed casual but left marks anyway. I watched her move around the kitchen, deliberately busy, refilling cups that didn't need refilling. Every motion felt like a small act of control, the way she smoothed her sleeve, adjusted her necklace, the quiet sigh she tried to hide when she thought I wasn't looking. There was a time, years ago, when she'd been my professor, a guest lecturer, just once. I'd been 22, too eager, too sure of things. She'd left before the semester ended, and I never asked why. But I remembered how she'd said my name back then, careful, like tasting something she shouldn't. Now she stood across from me, older but not smaller. Still carrying that same grace that made people lower their voices around her. "I shouldn't have texted you," she said finally. It was a moment of weakness. You call it that, I said, but you still pressed send. She looked at me, then really looked, and something flickered in her expression. Not regret, not quite. More like recognition. Her thumb traced the rim of her cup. You're too young to understand how heavy some things get. I laughed quietly. You always say that like it's a fact. It is, she said. You still believe people can change their minds and hearts will follow. I learned the other way around. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was full, like the room itself was listening. Her hand brushed against mine as she reached for the cream, barely touching. But neither of us pulled away fast enough. The pulse in my wrist jumped. I wondered if she felt it, if she could tell how close I was to saying something I shouldn't. I should probably go, I said. She nodded, but didn't move. Probably. Neither of us did. She stepped forward, close enough that I could see the small freckle near her collarbone, the one I remembered noticing once before and pretending not to. I've made enough mistakes to know where this goes, she whispered. And she didn't finish. I should have left then. I should have stepped back, broken the spell. But instead, my hand moved on its own, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. Her breath caught. My fingers lingered longer than they should have. And when she finally spoke, her voice was barely a thread of air. Don't make this harder than it already is. I almost said, then stop looking at me like that. But I didn't. Because the space between us, that fragile, charged inch, said everything words couldn't. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. It never was. She'd texted me, if you're near the library, I left something for you. No details. Just that. When I got there, she was still inside, standing near the back shelves, pretending to browse. A faint smile when she saw me. A warning in her eyes. You weren't supposed to come now, she whispered. You knew I would. Her lips pressed together, not denying it. The library was quiet, too quiet. The air smelled of paper and polish, and every sound we made felt too loud, too close. She held a folder out to me, the one she'd promised to help me with for work. Our hands brushed again, the contact small but sharp. You shouldn't keep doing that, she said, pulling her hand back slowly. Doing what? Looking at me like you're trying to remember something you shouldn't have seen. I swallowed. Maybe I am. She gave a low, shaky laugh, then turned toward the shelf, tracing a line along the spine of a book that wasn't hers. You think you're subtle, she said. But people notice. People? She hesitated. Someone asked about you. They saw us at the cafe last week. Her voice was steady, but her hand wasn't. What did you say? I asked. I said you were a friend. That you used to be a student. That it's nothing. And did they believe you? I don't know. The space between us felt smaller than it was. She took a slow step back, but her eyes stayed on me, sharp, assessing, almost daring me to move first. You're making this dangerous, she murmured. Wasn't it already? Something in her expression broke just for a second. The softness underneath all that control. I moved closer. Close enough to feel the warmth of her breath, faint coffee, and peppermint. The folder slipped from her hand and landed on the floor with a muted thud. Neither of us looked down. Her pulse flickered at her throat. She whispered, someone could walk in. Then maybe we should stop. Maybe. But she didn't move. The quiet stretched, thick with everything we weren't saying. My hand hovered near her arm, not touching yet. Her eyes flicked down to it, then back to mine, a silent dare, or a plea, or both. Then, the sound of footsteps. We broke apart fast, the kind of quick that only makes the truth louder. A woman's voice carried down the aisle, calling her name. She straightened, smoothed her blouse, tried to steady her breathing. Go, she whispered. Now. But I didn't move. Not yet. The other woman turned the corner, a colleague maybe, smiling politely, unaware. they exchanged a few words I barely heard. My heart was still hammering too loud. When she finally looked back at me, her expression had changed, calm again, but her voice betrayed her. "You shouldn't come here anymore," she said softly. "People notice too much." I nodded, but neither of us turned away. For a moment, time bent the room, the noise, the rules, all of it falling quiet beneath the pull between us. And when she brushed past me to leave, her hand grazed mine again, brief, electric, intentional this time. She didn't look back. But I knew she'd felt it too. It rained that evening, heavy, relentless, the kind that makes the whole world sound like it's waiting. She opened the door before I even knocked. Her hair was damp, tied loosely, her sweater soft and old. She looked tired, not the kind of tired sleep fixes, but the kind that comes from holding too much inside. "I shouldn't have texted you," she said again. Same words, softer this time. "You've said that before. I keep hoping it'll start meaning something." The rain drummed against the windows. Her house smelled of rain and warm dust, a record still spinning low in the background. She crossed her arms, then uncrossed them. "You shouldn't keep coming here," she said. "Then stop leaving the door open." That made her pause. A faint tremor crossed her face, part anger, part something dangerously close to relief. She walked past me, toward the table where two half-empty glasses sat. One was hers, one mine, from last week. Neither of us had bothered washing them. "I don't know what you think this is," she said, voice unsteady. "I don't think," I said. "That's the problem." She laughed, a small, breathless sound. "You think this is simple? That it's just wanting?" "I think it's real," I said quietly. "And maybe that's worse." Her back stiffened. The words hit somewhere she'd been guarding carefully. She turned, eyes sharp, wet, not from the rain. "You don't understand what this could ruin. I've spent years keeping things from falling apart, and you," she stopped herself, shaking her head. "You make me forget why I tried." I stepped closer, slow enough that she could stop me if she wanted. She didn't. Her hands were trembling. I could see it even in the half-light. "You should go," she said, but her voice broke halfway through. "Tell me to leave, and I will," I said. She looked at me for a long time, too long, then whispered, "That's not fair. Neither is pretending you don't feel this." I reached up, brushed a strand of hair from her face. It clung to my fingers, damp and soft. Her breath caught, quick and shallow. "You're making this impossible," she said. "Then stop me." Her eyes closed for a moment, like she was searching for restraint and finding none left. When she opened them again, something in her gaze had changed. She stepped forward, close enough that the warmth of her body erased the cold from my clothes. My hand found her waist, tentative at first, then firmer when she didn't move away. Her forehead rested against mine. I could feel her breathing, uneven, unsteady. "If this happens," she whispered, "we don't get to go back. Maybe we were never supposed to." The world outside went silent, the rain holding its breath with us. Her lips parted barely, almost touching mine. Then, somewhere inside the house, a phone started ringing. Neither of us moved. Her hand tightened against my chest, trembling. The phone kept ringing. And just before she turned her head away, she whispered, voice trembling but certain, "You really were the distraction, but God help me, you're starting to feel like the point." The phone kept ringing long after she stopped breathing. Not literally, but the kind of pause where even air feels dangerous. She finally pulled away and crossed the room to silence it. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up, eyes darting to the screen. She didn't answer. Just stared at the name, jaw tightening. "Who is it?" I asked. She didn't reply. The phone stopped ringing. The silence it left behind felt heavier than the sound itself. "It's him," she said finally, setting it face down on the counter. "Him?" She hesitated. "My ex-husband." A long breath. "He still thinks there's something left to fix." I didn't know what to say. I'd never asked much about her past, maybe because I was afraid of what I'd find there. She turned toward me. He's been calling more lately. He heard I wasn't seeing anyone. Her voice thinned on that last line. So you told him that, I said carefully. I told him what I needed to. And what's that? That I'm fine. She gave a small, broken laugh. That I'm not making any mistakes. Our eyes met. The lie sat there between us, breathing. Then she said, quieter, he came by last week. When you left. The words hit like cold water. You didn't tell me. I didn't plan to, she said. He saw your jacket on the chair. Asked if I'd started seeing one of my old students. My stomach dropped. And? I told him no. The space between those two words, told him and no, felt like it might split the floor. You lied, I said. She met my gaze, defiant, trembling. To protect you. To protect myself. Pick whichever sounds better. The air between us pulsed anger, guilt, wanting, all twisted together. You didn't have to, I did. She cut me off, voice cracking for the first time. You don't understand what people say, what they think. I've worked too long to be taken seriously again. You could walk away clean, I wouldn't. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. I didn't ask you to lie, I said, stepping closer. You didn't have to. She was breathing fast now, the sound shallow and uneven. I could feel it, that ache of something too alive to ignore. My hand moved toward hers, then stopped midair. She took a half step forward, close enough that her sweater brushed my arm. You shouldn't be here, she whispered, but her body leaned in anyway. Then tell me to go. Her eyes darted between my mouth and my eyes, once, twice, and then she said it, barely audible, I can't. The confession wasn't loud, but it changed everything. She closed her eyes, exhaled shakily, and whispered, he's coming tomorrow. To talk. Something inside me went still. About us? Her lips parted, trembling. About me. But he'll find you if you're not careful. Rain still pressed against the windows, softer now, like it was listening. I stepped closer anyway, close enough that I could feel the heat of her breath against my throat. Then maybe, I said, voice low, it's time he did. She looked up, eyes wide, fear, want, disbelief all tangled together. And when she whispered my name this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a surrender. The night before he was supposed to come, neither of us slept. She called late, voice trembling through the phone. Can you just come over? I don't want to think. So I did. When she opened the door, she didn't look surprised to see me, just relieved, in that quiet, dangerous way people do when they've run out of ways to lie to themselves. The house was dim, only the hallway light on. She wore something simple, a gray shirt, sleeves rolled up, bare feet on the wooden floor. You shouldn't have, she said. Then why'd you leave the porch light on? She almost smiled, then shook her head like she was trying to stop herself from feeling anything. You always do that, she whispered. You turn everything into a reason. Maybe I just see the ones you hide. She took a step closer. The air between us felt charged, that invisible thread pulling, stretching, waiting to snap. You don't understand what this costs me, she said softly. My job, my reputation, everything I've built. I don't want to ruin anything, I said. Her eyes flicked to mine, stopping the words before I could find them. You just what? I just can't stop thinking about you. The words came out rough, unpolished, real. She froze, a tiny, sharp intake of breath, the kind that sounds like pain and want at once. Then she stepped forward until her chest nearly brushed mine. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You think I don't? Her hand lifted slow, uncertain, until her fingers touched the collar of my shirt. Just the edge. Her knuckles grazed my throat, light as breath. I felt her pulse before I saw her expression, eyes dark, glinting, wet at the corners. This isn't supposed to happen, she said. Then tell me to stop. She didn't. Her other hand found my arm, anchoring herself there, trembling slightly. You don't know what it's like, she whispered. To want something that makes no sense, that could undo everything. I leaned closer, close enough to feel the warmth of her words against my mouth. Then maybe it's not supposed to make sense. She closed her eyes, head tilted up a breath away, maybe less. The clock ticked somewhere in the background, steady and indifferent. I could taste the decision in the air, the moment right before gravity wins. And then, softly, she said, if this happens, you can't unsee me after. Not as your teacher, or your mistake, or someone older. Just me. I already do, I said. Her forehead pressed against mine. We stayed like that, suspended, shaking, every heartbeat louder than the rain outside. She exhaled slowly, her voice almost breaking. Then don't stop. I didn't. We didn't move fast, didn't rush. It wasn't about the moment, it was about everything that led to it, every hesitation, every almost. When she finally pulled back, her breath caught on a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. Now you know, she said softly. Know what? What it feels like to finally stop pretending. And in that fragile, trembling quiet, we both understood, whatever came next, neither of us could go back. Morning came quietly, no thunder, no guilt loud enough to fill the silence. Just light, soft and gray, spilling through her curtains like it was trying not to wake us. She was sitting on the edge of the couch when I woke, her hair loose, a blanket around her shoulders. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn. All that was left was the faint smell of it, damp air, coffee brewing somewhere in the kitchen, the slow hum of a world beginning again. I sat up, unsure what to say first. The night before still clung to the room, not in what we'd done, but in what it meant. The air still held the warmth of it. She looked over her shoulder. You're awake. Didn't sleep much. Me neither. A pause. Not awkward. Just heavy. She poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs and handed me one. Her hand brushed mine, a quiet, familiar electricity, softer now, no longer sharp. I thought I'd regret it, she said, settling beside me. But I don't. You sound surprised. She smiled faintly. You'd be amazed how good I am at regretting things. We both laughed, quietly. Then silence again, but a gentler kind, the kind that sits between two people who've already said what needed saying. You know, I said, tracing the rim of my cup, when I first met you, I thought you were impossible. She tilted her head. And now? Now I think you were just scared. Her breath caught a small sound, half a sigh. You make that sound like it's easy to admit. I'm not asking for easy, I said. Just honest. She looked down at her hands, slender, steady now. Honest is that I've spent half my life trying not to want things that don't make sense. And then you showed up and made everything make sense and no sense at all. She turned toward me, eyes tired but soft. And you're still too young for this. I shook my head. Maybe. But I'm here anyway. She leaned against me then, quietly, like the decision had already been made. My arm went around her shoulders, her head fit against me like it belonged there. Neither of us spoke for a while. Outside, the street was still wet, but the clouds were breaking, a pale streak of sunlight catching in her hair. I don't know what happens next, she said. Then we start with coffee, I said. And see what survives after that. She smiled into my shoulder. You make it sound simple. Maybe it is, if we stop trying to explain it. She turned her face up toward me, eyes clear, no hiding left in them. You really were a distraction. And now? Her lips curved, quiet, knowing. Now you're the point. I pressed a light kiss to her forehead, the kind that says I'm here, not I own this. She closed her eyes, her hand finding mine. For the first time, the silence between us felt right. The world outside had stopped judging. The rain had passed. And for once, neither of us was running. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?